Okay, so we'll open it up for questions.
First of all, thank you to all of you for being here. I really appreciate your presentations. And one of the words I wrote down was brave, because that's brave to get up in front of this group of, I mean, you're researchers too, but to claim that. So thank you for doing that. One question I just had, it's a real simple, basic question for the second group was, have you seen an impact on police policies? I know from the Obama, I've read the COPS report that you referred to, but are you seeing a difference in policy and procedure and training in the police department? I noticed in the first slide you showed of police stops, the last year had gone way down. Is that a policy issue, or is that just because the year isn't done?
So, and you can jump in after. When we talk about the numbers dropping, which is when we have meetings with like NYPD officials, that's the first thing they bring out, right? Well, the numbers have dropped. Well, the numbers we believe haven't dropped, right? We just believe that there's been no reportings, right? In New York City, they only report level 3 infractions. Level 1 and 2 aren't. And level 1 and 2 are the ones where, you know, the cops are hopping out of cars and sticking their hands in your pockets. And, you know, a stop, question, a frisk is a pat down. It's not supposed to go directly into a search. If you're doing a search, you're looking for weapons, and instead what they're doing is looking for drugs and criminalizing young people, right? So if the numbers, let's say they have dropped, it's still a disproportionate attack on people of color in these. In the sense of policy, I think it's still a little early. We've seen certain implementations, right? We're looking over some of the training and gave them, or for instance, we looked at a UF-250 form, which is a form an officer is supposed to fill out when he stops you, but doesn't. And we went over and gave recommendations, and they changed some stuff. So the newer class that graduated from the academy is getting these trainings, so we're still trying to figure out what the policy looks like. But
yeah, I mean, I think just to add to that, I would say like that report that we spoke about earlier, from the Obama's administration. I think one of the main key pieces that got into that was parts of the policy that we're trying to push, which is the Right to Know Act, which is a two-part piece of legislation, one that consists of an ID bill and the other that consists of a consent to search bill. And I think a lot of that was pushed at our public safety, I think that's what it's called, public safety city council hearing, where we gave a lot of this information and spoke about how the feelings and sentiments of the police department and the perception of young people was very biased and very harmful to just their own ecosystem, as was used earlier, their environmental development. So I think in that sense, a lot of change can be made and is in the progress of happening.
And even thinking about what it looks like, right? For instance, the ID bill is simply asking officers to identify themselves, right? And in New York City, what we've seen a lot is, for instance, if Darian has an interaction and the officer's plainclothes, he doesn't have a badge, this could be anybody, right? So for his own safety, he has the right to ask the officer. What happens is that it tends to escalate, right? The officer will be like, well, what do you want my ID for? I don't have to give you anything. Or what happens? Oh, they walk away. You understand? So it's even something that's simple, right? It's just like, hey, we just want to know who you are. We just want to protect ourselves as people, right? We have that right to protect ourselves. So I think we're now in the process of taking baby steps and trying to figure out what a larger community bridge can look like.
And just to add to that final point, both of these legislations are aimed at situations in which the person is not being arrested or summoned at all. And that was the large percentage of the stops that came out. So the number that we saw, the 53%, that's just young people. Like over 90% of people who were stopped and frisked during that time period were Black and brown people, and over 95% of them were innocent. So it is like, this research is definitely fueling a lot of our policy arguments, and I think that's the biggest takeaway from this research project and the collaboration. I think that's why we had it as our last point, this intergenerational and intersectional analysis of data and information and the realities of Black and brown and indigenous peoples. I think that is the most important thing. Definitely.
Okay, now I'm gonna come back to you with this one. Also, I sit on the DMC Task Force, which is Disproportionate Minority Contact. which is here in Charlottesville. And we are experiencing the same thing that you're speaking of now. But our youth really don't have no right. They're not sitting at the table. They don't bring our youth to the table to speak to them on how they feel or what do they feel. So for a town like this, being only 19% Black, make up of 19% Black population, for youth, or even for me as a front line, I stand on the front line for the youth. Could you tell me what is it that I would need to do so that I would be able to bring it back to the youth, not only to the youth, but bring it back to the task force, with my people, that we can be able to speak about this so we can create policies here in Charlottesville? Because right now we're supposed to be in that part of creating policy, but a lot of transparency is not being I can't find the right word for it right now, but we're not together on this, because it's like one thing we say is like it doesn't matter, but then when you come to the police, they don't want to accept responsibility. Or also they're not training all of the officers either to be able to handle the situations that may occur between mental health behavior, or just, because that's the first thing they stigmatize us with, being Black, low income housing, and we have a mental health issue. So instead of trying to address that, the first thing you would do, like you say, if we walk and stop and frisk, and then once you frisk us and we say, well, can we have your ID number? Then, like you say, it goes into this, that, and the third. So I'm not going to hold you up right now to be explaining to me, but if you, after y'all come down, could we have a conversation? Thank
Definitely. You. I think in the beginning, the way we started out, or at least from my perspective, was like that local groundwork, So we started out by like having informal conversations, educational conversations. We started out by holding know your rights trainings and cop watch trainings and things like that, and letting young people know that they're not victims, they're not pawns that are moved, that they actually have power, that they can actually do something, they can actually influence change, and if they don't like something, that they can change it, they can fix it, and by whatever means necessary that they feel. So I think the beginning is definitely education. I think that's where all of our work kind of begins, is really understanding the systems and policies that be. And I think after that, to move into a more physical approach, that know your rights training moved into cop watching, which is actually recording these police officers. Like, the police officers cannot tell us that they're not doing these things when we have video of them doing these things. And I think after that, lastly, is this survey process. I think this survey process really came out of like this anger, or this hurt that we were feeling in our community at the peak of stop and frisk, at the time where this policy was really like taking the most toll on our communities. So we decided we were going to actually figure out how young people felt about these policies and what they wanted to do. And this data set wasn't all just numbers. We didn't have young people just check off boxes like, this is my name and this is my age and random quidbits. We actually had them give informed feedback, So like, what questions would you have for police officers? What are some things you would want police officers to do? What do you see the role of policing in your community? And things like that. That was the open-ended part of our data set. And that was probably the most impactful. That's where we got a lot of those statements that I read off earlier, So I think in a very short way, that's route to take.
I would just briefly add, organize. They cannot have these conversations without you guys, right? There is a power in people. There is a power in solidarity, which begins with, educating ourselves and politicizing ourselves, having the uncomfortable conversations, having each other's backs, demanding. Do not be afraid to demand, right? People have power. Change that's come is because people stood up one day and were like, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to get up, we're going to organize. And it can be scary. But you do it, because if you're not going to do it, no one else is going to do it. And if we don't do it, it's not going to change, right? So organize, come together, demand it. Sit and block somebody's door for hours if that's what it takes. But, create a plan that not only enforces safety, but messaging, right? Be on the same page and understand that it takes time. But if we don't do it now or begin to do it now, it's not going to happen, right? I would definitely say organize.
Sure. I have a question for the girls from the WIT program. So early in the conference, we were talking about what roadblocks young people have when they're trying to get involved in their communities. And I'm interested in knowing what resources you feel should be given to all young people who are looking to get more involved.
In WIT, we always say that teens need to be loved, valued, and heard, and then they are unstoppable. And I think organizations like WIT and different affinity groups and community service clubs have given teens to be heard and feel like they could make a difference. And I think that's one of the biggest resources, to know that someone's listening to you and someone believes that you can make a difference.
Yeah, I agree with Manali. Groups like clubs like that, and just ones that put teens in charge. Ones that I know about are like Interact Club and journalism. There's a journalism class at my school where I went in and the teacher didn't talk at all. It was led by students and they had the voice. And I think clubs like that, and also like WIT, like that we're in charge and we set goals and we create them. That's clubs like that. Resources like that are what would help teens.
Hi, this is also for Melanie and Manali. I'm curious, so if you could tell us a little bit, is WIT an after-school program? Is this like, okay. And I'm curious about the process that you went through. You showed us examples of a lot of different youth-created action projects. And, talk a little bit about how did people choose their projects? How did you develop them? How did you implement them? Thanks.
So we start the class with different discussions, and then we just brainstorm ideas and look in our community to see what do we want to change, what do we want to do differently, and how can just things that we can help in our community. And we start with that basic idea. And then we sit down and write, okay, what is the main point of this project that we want to create? And then we say, what's the mission? What's the vision? What do we want to see it? What's the end point? What do we want to see when it's done? And we start from there. And honestly, there's a lot of pivoting. The projects I've been involved in, they were not what they are now. They were not at the beginning. And there's a lot of setbacks, but if you're passionate and you're focused on your goal and you're willing to change it if you need to, then you'll be golden.
I was a part of a project called Student to Student Art, as I mentioned in the presentation, and art is one of my biggest passions. I've been dancing for many years now, and the whole thing about WIT is launching projects that you're targeting issues that you're very, very passionate about. And we believe that if you're passionate about a subject, you will do whatever it takes to get to the end mission and try to tackle this issue and solve it. And so with Student to Student Art, we ran into many obstacles because often adults didn't believe in teens, or just obstacles with getting into schools because teens don't provide after-school programs very often. But we were pioneers and we did set out and we were successful in the end. But it does, as Melanie said, we go through a bunch of obstacles, but the main thing is finding something that you're passionate about and wanting to change that.
Can I add something? Okay. So if you feel that your project isn't going the way you want, we don't feel discouraged, because we can be an addition to other projects. I remember I wanted to start something with driver's ed because I was going through that at the time. And then I felt like it wasn't going in the direction I wanted. So I joined the other girls that were in the picture, and we created a program where we wanted to give students the opportunity to have a free therapy program, because around 3 of the girls in that program, they felt that, they had the opportunity to have free therapy, and it was taken away from budget cuts, which is like Student to Student Art and other projects. That's where it starts. They have the loss. Like once they have it, it's good, and then when it's gone and they don't know how to fix it anymore. So I joined that group, and it was I turned out to be very passionate about it. I just liked helping people and being able to partner teens with other teens as well. I really liked it. So you can always join other projects.
Time for a few more questions.
Hi, I have a question for Darian and Adilka. And as I was listening to you talk about this issue, I was wondering if you've ever brought these data to small groups of police to discuss them and what you learned from those conversations.
At this very moment, small groups of policing, not yet. And it's a lot. It comes from a lot of reasons, beginning that we can't have those conversations without our members, right, who do this work. Our members don't want to sit in front of police, don't feel safe, don't feel comfortable having the narrative with the same cops they're going to see that later on might stop or might harass them repetitively. So that's one of the reasons, right? When we have these conversations often, because a lot of folks are like, well, you can't build unless you don't have conversations with police. And I agree, at some point we will have to sit and have that level, but it means really having, some of us, it means really having a safe space to do so. We do sit in certain spaces where we do have contact with law enforcement, sometimes in the higher ranks, which works because they have that data, but that doesn't work because they're not on the ground, actually having the interactions. But we're still trying to figure out how to really.
I think another very important part to that is cooperation. I think the woman here earlier was talking about transparency and how policing institutions are often not very transparent with the community that they're supposed to be policing. And I think that's very much our problem here. It's not as though we haven't reached out to police officers or policing institutions or departments. Most times those policing institutions or departments don't want to talk to us. They don't want to share data. They don't want to share information. They don't want to have these collective conversations, even around certain little policies like body cams. We were having a conversation around that with city council members and other elected officials. And the police later decided that they were going to pilot their own body cams, and they weren't going to tell anybody else about that process or what that process looked like or what it meant or how it would happen, where it would happen, any of these things, And this was an idea and a conversation that we as the community started having. And then as soon as we talked about it, they took the idea and went on their own route with it and did whatever they wanted to do. So there's this thorough disconnect between communities of color and policing institutions, not just in this physical form, but also in this metaphysical form of what it means, the sentiments and the attitudes and the theories of policing departments.
Hi, good afternoon. Nikki Dawes. I really enjoyed both the presentations, lots of food for thought. One of my burning questions has to do, is more relevant, I think, for Darian and Adilka, and it's about, I hate to bring sort of the parents back into the issue. Obviously, your youth who are very empowered and absolutely capable of doing the work that you're interested in. But I remember one of the conversations that were sort of ignited with the Ferguson and all that stuff is parents' concern for the well-being and safety of their children. And I was wondering if that came up for y'all, Darian, and I don't know, your personal experience or other youth and conversations they had with their parents, expressing a commitment and how they're being careful. Just wondering if that came up in the work and how you address that.
Definitely. I think safety is always a concern, especially when we're dealing with young people. And I think a lot of that stems from that social stigmatization, of young people being weak or powerless or just vulnerable in its very own aspect. But so we're always constantly dealing with parents. We're never going to take young people out to a rally or action or something that we feel may be dangerous without parental consent or without making sure that young person is at least over the age of 18 and can make their own conscious decisions about their body and their well-being. I'm not going to speak for other young people and their interaction with their parents or what their parents think about the work that we do or they are doing. I can speak personally for myself. My mother is terrified. My mother is a frantic mess. Every protest I go out to, she is up until I come home. Adilka mentioned that I got arrested with some folks on December 4th last year, and my mother was like waiting for me to come out the precinct. I was in the precinct for about 21 hours, and she was up the entire time. My siblings were up the entire time. My mom came out to that protest to make sure I didn't get arrested, but I ended up getting arrested anyway. So my mom is constantly a mess. We and her have constant conversations. It's to the point my mom was like totally against social media, totally against Facebook. She was like, I have all my friends on my cell phone. I don't need to create other apps. But as soon as that incident happened, my mother created a Facebook so she could have all of my organizers and all of the folks that I work closely with in direct communication and direct contact. So I definitely feel like there's this sense of worry that parents have, and I think parents are always going to have it. I think parents had it when the Black Panthers were forming. I think parents had it when the Young Lords were forming, when the indigenous movement was forming and things of the sort. So I always think there's going to be this sense of concern about young people and the actions they take moving forward to change the positions or the realities that they have. But I think it's just having that faith and trust in them that they're going to be able to lead us into this better future because they are our future.
And it really means being transparent and having relationships, right? Like I have a relationship with Darian's mom, and I have a relationship with a lot of parents of the youth that I work with, to the point that sometimes if the mothers can't make it to parent-teacher night because they're working 2 jobs to take care of their single household, I go and I pick it up and we have these conversations. It means when you make a commitment to be involved in these lives, it is a commitment. I get phone calls at 2, 3 in the morning often, right? My phone is always on when I sleep. I'm arrested. My son's arrested. What do I do? Something's happening. And it really is being transparent. And these are the same moms that call me like, a cop roughed up my kid. What do I do? How do I get involved? And then the parents get involved. For parents who are afraid, and it is real to be afraid. I respect boundaries. If a young person is like, I want to go do this, and I'm like, your mother's not comfortable, I'm not taking you anywhere. It's that respect and that boundary. But a lot of the times we have parents that join us, right? Like, I get it, I see it happening. And we've built a lot of bonds with moms and family members of folks who've been killed by police, right? We've met like Mohammed Ba's mom, Amadou Diallo's mom, like a lot of folks that were high profile and low profile. And that relationship is also built within our constituency and within like the parents and stuff. But we tread softly. My mom is, and I'm a grown up, and my mom is always just like, are you okay? Are you arrested? Moms are scary, or dads are scary, right? So I always respect it. But it's about community and coming together and building that bond and that bridge and taking it a step at a time.
I would say even further that our organization, Make the Road New York, acts as this facilitator or mediator when situations happen, often instead of like having a parent who's like, oh, this happened to my child and I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. My son got suspended from school and I don't know why. I don't think they should have gotten suspended, but I don't really know next steps. Or my daughter got arrested or a cop felt her up. So I don't know what to do, how to take next steps. And so they come to Make the Road and we offer those services. We have lawyers who are willing to help. We have a team of committed organizers who are going to sit, and no matter how messed up the story is, how much it makes our stomach turn, we're going to sit here and we're going to listen and we're going to build. And I think it's like, I'm sorry, I have a horrible memory. Someone else was saying on another panel earlier about building these relationships, and it means so much than just, offering resources to people, but actually just being there with them in their time of need.
Okay, there were a few more hands, but we're out of time, so I invite you to come up and continue the conversation with our panelists. Are there any remaining announcements for tomorrow? Okay, we're set to begin with the light breakfast at 8:30 tomorrow, and panels will start at 9. So we look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, guys.